The night it struck, the wind didn't sound like wind. It sounded like something tearing through the world. By dawn, entire villages in western Alaska were underwater. Homes vanished. Families climbed rooftops. The sea had swallowed the land. It wasn't just a storm. It was the remnants of Typhoon Halong, now one of the worst disasters Alaska's remote coast had ever faced. Over the next few days, rescue planes filled the sky. Hundreds of people, elders, children, entire families were airlifted out of what used to be their towns. Kipnuk and Kwigillingok, two small Alaska native villages near the Bering Sea, were gone. The storm began as a tropical system far across the Pacific. By the time it reached Alaska, it had lost its name but not its power. Record storm surge followed, pushing waves more than 6 feet above the highest tides. For places built at sea level, that difference meant everything. In Kwigillingok, the U.S. Coast Guard pulled 24 people from the water after their homes floated away. Some clung to debris through the night. Others never made it. Among the missing were 2 men, Chester Kashatok and Vernon Pavel. The devastation was complete. Officials said 121 homes were destroyed in Kipnuk. In Kwigillingok, almost every house was damaged or carried off its foundation. Both communities together had only about 1,000 people, nearly all Alaska native, and now many had nothing left. These villages were isolated even before the storm. There were no roads leading in or out, only boats or small planes. Their survival always depended on the land and sea, fishing, hunting, and gathering. Now the land itself had turned against them. As the floodwaters rose, people crowded into schools and churches, whatever still stood above water. By Monday, the full scope of the disaster became clear. Power systems were down. Fuel drums floated through towns. The air smelled faintly of diesel. Cell networks were gone. In some shelters, toilets didn't work, and people used buckets instead. The local school in Kwigillingok was the only building with power, but it was crowded with 400 survivors. In Bethel, the regional hub, nearly 500 miles from Anchorage, a National Guard armory turned into a temporary shelter. But even that filled quickly. Food was running low, and the health corporation warned it couldn't stay open much longer. Still, rescue efforts didn't stop. Military planes began flying evacuees from Bethel to Anchorage. The Alaska Airlines Center, normally used for basketball games and concerts, became a temporary home for storm survivors. Officials called it one of the largest airlifts in Alaska's history. Across the region, more than 1,500 people were displaced. The Coast Guard described entire neighborhoods gone, homes ripped from their foundations, people swimming through black water trying to hold on to floating debris. Experts warned that rebuilding would be slow and painful. Construction materials would need to be flown or shipped in. But winter was closing in fast. The freezing season in Alaska doesn't wait. Once snow and ice set in, rebuilding becomes almost impossible until spring. Some homes, emergency officials said, were too damaged to ever be lived in again. Many residents had lost their freezers full of fish and moose meat, food meant to last through the long winter. Fuel depots were also damaged, raising fears of pollution that could poison local waters and wildlife. For communities that live off subsistence, the impact was more than physical loss. It threatened their way of life. Alaska's Emergency Management Division described the scene in Kipnuk as catastrophic. The community had been destroyed. Officials and volunteers were doing everything they could, but the storm had left behind a wound too deep to heal quickly. By Thursday, assessments showed that Kipnuk had seen water rise 6.6 feet above its usual high tide, a record-breaking level. The last time anything close had happened was in 2000. Floodwaters had hit Kipnuk more than 30 times since 1979. But this one was different, stronger, faster, unforgiving. Climate scientists said there was a reason. Typhoon Halong's remnants had crossed unusually warm waters in the Pacific. That warmth, fueled by human-caused climate change, gave the storm its strength even as it moved north. A climate specialist at the University of Alaska Fairbanks said that Indigenous communities in Alaska were strong and resilient. But when nearly every house in a village is uninhabitable and winter is weeks away, even resilience has limits. The state had known Kipnuk was at risk. A 2022 analysis warned that its defenses were weak and needed immediate attention. The Environmental Protection Agency had even approved a $20 million project to build flood protections. But the grant was canceled in May. The work never began. Now that delay had turned deadly. Helicopters and planes continued flying through the week, carrying supplies, food, water, generators, communication gear. Between each landing, storm survivors tried to keep their spirits alive. Some gathered in gymnasiums to pray, sing, and share what little they had. Others simply waited, watching the horizon for the next rescue plane. Each passing day brought more urgency. Another storm system was forming offshore, and temperatures were dropping. Winter would soon cover the wreckage in snow. For many, the loss went beyond buildings. It was about history, identity, and home. Alaska Native villages like Kipnuk and Kwigillingok have stood for generations, tied deeply to the land and sea. To leave them behind meant more than evacuation. It meant displacement from culture, from ancestors, from everything familiar. Officials promised recovery, but even they admitted it would take years. Roads, houses, and fuel systems could be rebuilt. But what couldn't be rebuilt so easily was the connection people had to their land. By the week's end, as flights continued toward Anchorage, the scale of the tragedy became clearer. 49 villages across the region had suffered impacts. One life lost, two still missing, hundreds of homes destroyed, thousands displaced. The numbers told part of the story, but the real story was quieter. The sound of people leaving behind generations of memories, not knowing when or if they would return. The storm may have ended, but for the people of Kipnuk and Kwigillingok, Typhoon Halong's aftermath had just begun. That's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more clear and calm reports on extreme weather events. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Please note that some footage in this video is for illustrative purposes and may not depict the exact events described. Thank you for watching and stay safe.